Things just took a shocking turn for the Boston Celtics as a brand new report has dropped that has fans fired up surrounding one particular player and Brad Stevens' plans going forward. We're going to break that down and discuss what this means for the Boston Celtics as something huge is brewing. We also have a few other updates, including one surrounding their recent first-round pick. But before we get into it all, folks, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Celtics content. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. You've been absolute beasts with that support. Folks, a lot to go over today. Now, obviously, the Celtics are in a pretty interesting position. They have their 15-man. The roster's full at this moment. We're seeing the Summer League play out. It's going to be very interesting. But some new reports have dropped surrounding a former Boston Celtic by the name of, as we all know, Marcus Smart, as Jake Weinbach has dropped a pretty big report here saying that a reunion between Smart and the Celtics is not off the table. The Wizards, who carry 17 players in the active roster, of course, the Celtics have 15. The Wizards, who have 17, they're over by 2, are expected to offload key veterans to make room for younger assets and would reportedly prefer to send Smart to a desired location. So this is very intriguing because a lot of different things to go over here. Now, obviously, there's a couple of different aspects of this, but for one, the Celtics at this moment, they are, perusing the trade market. We've heard rumblings about Anthony Simons. Of course, for a while, there was rumblings about Jaylen Brown. We'll see if that ultimately, plays out. But a reunion between Smart and the Celtics is not off the table. Now, this one is interesting because he obviously had some of his best years absolutely, with the Boston Celtics before Brad Stevens, well, I know the GM at the time with the Celtics, moved off of Marcus Smart, of course. And this is a very interesting report here because it initially stemmed back to almost a month ago, June 16th. You can see there the Washington Wizards are looking to move Marcus Smart per HP Basketball. And basically, they said the Wizards would like to move Smart to a contender, but there's been little interest so far. He might be one of the guys moved in the later days of free agency after teams strike out on other targets. This was a month ago. And then, of course, the Jake Weinbach report comes out. And even back then on June 16th, and of course, a lot of dominoes have fallen since June 16th. But Celtics League came out and said, if you're the Celtics, why not bring back Marcus Smart? He's on an expiring contract next season, familiar with Boston's system, and it shouldn't take much to get him from Washington. Brad Stevens, you know what to do. And this would, of course, have a backcourt of Derrick White and Marcus Smart. And, of course, the front court still has a lot of work to do. There's still some rumblings about, upgrading the center position. We're going to put that to the side for this video. This would be a super intriguing move. Now, let me know down below what your thoughts are if you think it would be a good move because, looking at his stats, again, his best days were absolutely unequivocally with Boston. He had a very good 20 games with Memphis when he initially got traded over for the 2 first-round picks. Since then, last year with the Wizards, not a competitive team. He was kind of just floating. He could, I genuinely believe he's only 30 years old, kind of rejuvenate his career with Boston, and B, just be actually a useful player because this team, they're not trying to tank next year by any means, the Celtics, right? They're trying to retool a little bit, just kind of remain status quo until Jayson Tatum returns. And of course, for Damian Lillard, there's some rumblings about the Celtics bringing Dame Lillard in to go with Tatum. That's a conversation for another day, but it makes sense why a reunion is not off the table. The Wizards are desperate to get rid of him. Now, I think that a buyout is most likely here. I'm not entirely sure that the Celtics will want to give up assets to acquire him. But again, the roster's full, so in order to do that, you would have to move off of another player to make space for Marcus Smart, and they could go about that in, a variety of ways here. But it becomes very, very interesting. And if he gets bought out, we can just assume that for a minute, the Celtics will probably be at the top of his list simply because of the fact that he's been here before. Yes, they traded him, but he's been here before. He would be a part of a winning culture still. The Celtics won a couple years ago, but not only that, they're not trying to completely just lose next season. They have a very solid team as is right now, and they'll probably move off of, Anthony Simons. We assume, that's my prediction, at least sometime this offseason. So it makes things very interesting, especially given the fact that he has a lot of potential remaining. A Derrick White backcourt with Marcus Smart, that would be one of the, if not the best defensive backcourt in the NBA by far. Now, of course, the offensive firepower, that remains to be seen. Can either of those guys create enough? You have Jaylen Brown, you have, some other guys, but at the end of the day, they're going to need some more firepower. And you can see an article that dropped as well. Marcus Smart is in his third team, or on his third team rather, in 3 years since the Boston Celtics traded him in June, and he could be on the move again, June 2023. And of course, for the Wizards, that's what makes this so interesting. The Wizards need to give off of somebody. They obviously have 17 players under contract for next season, and obviously the limit is 15. The Celtics currently have 15. So Washington will need to release or trade at least 2 players before the start of the season. And Smart is a prime candidate for the Wizards to move. 31-year-old guard, again, his cap hit at this moment is $21.6 million, which is the 3rd highest on the team behind a couple of the veteran guys that they have. And you look at the Washington's, backcourt, all these different things. they have young guys that they want to play. They have Bub Carrington, they have, their recent first round pick, but they also just have other guys, right? And I don't think that, because even if you're looking at it, from the perspective of a Chris Middleton or CJ McCollum, they're going to rather move off of Marcus Smart, which puts the Celtics in a perfect position. You can see here in the second paragraph. If Smart is bought out, the Celtics, in theory, could sign him to a low-cost contract. But if Simons is still on the roster, in addition to, of course, the other guards that they have, including, which we'll dive into in a minute, new rookie Hugo Gonzalez, it would make more sense for Boston to improve its front court depth. Neemias Queta and Luka Garza are the team's top two big men. And that is, of course, another thing. You have Peyton Pritchard, you have Derrick White, you have Anthony Simons, and you have Hugo Gonzalez. Does it make sense for them to acquire Smart in a buyout? It does if they're making subsequent moves, and I do ultimately think they do. I think Brad Stevens likes Marcus Smart, but doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to leave that up to you guys to decide in the comment section. I think ultimately it really depends on the other moves that Brad Stevens is going to make. If you're not going to improve the front court and you have other opportunities to do so, obviously you improve the front court over getting a guy like Marcus Smart. But if you have no other, avenues here and you're going to trade a guy like Anthony Simons, you can make an argument. You trade Simons and you bring in Smart to still kind of, remain decent, especially with him knowing the system. And then you go from there. Because again, their depth chart, White, Simons, Brown, Niang, Garza. That front court is really, really bad. The back court, pretty solid. Derrick White, Anthony Simons. You basically be replacing Anthony Simons with Marcus Smart. And then, of course, you basically have 3 point guards on the roster at that point. But again, you probably have, again, the playmaking is a bit of an interesting fit there. I mean, as it is right now, the playmaking is an interesting fit. Like, do you trust Derrick White or Peyton Pritchard to be a full-time playmaker? We'll have to get, it'll yet to be seen. I think you can, and we've seen it last year. But without Jayson Tatum alongside Jaylen Brown, it'll make things interesting. But let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. Things are getting very intriguing and a very surprising turn that the Celtics haven't ruled out a reunion with Marcus Smart. And I think it means that there are bigger fish that are frying for this team. Now, quickly before we wrap up as well, I want to dive into Hugo Gonzalez. And we saw him in the Summer League. Bruce and Patrick covered it a little bit. But again, the 28th overall pick, I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on it. We know he put up 12 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and he shot 4 for 12 from the field. You started to see his confidence, though, get better and better the more that the game went on. We saw his, I believe it was halftime report update, interview, whatever you want to call it, looked very confident, looked very locked in. I think that specifically for this team, they're probably going to give Hugo Gonzalez some run this year. And that would, of course, directly impact the Marcus Smart situation, which makes things even more interesting. So again, the whole Marcus Smart situation depends on what they're going to do with the rest of the team. There is a logjam right now in the backcourt. There is a deficit in the front court. Brad Stevens has some work to do, but things just took a very interesting turn. But it makes sense on the surface about why they'd want to bring back someone who was a long-time Boston Celtics and Celtic and did some really good things, even though they won a championship without him, and the trade was very much worth it. But folks, that'll wrap it up. You guys have been absolute beasts with the support. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.